Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, and welcome back to today's Daf, Nedarim Daf Pei. We are holding on Ayin Tes Amid Beis, 6 lines from the bottom of the Amid, Im Erchatz. Let's go back to the Mishnah, where we learned that a husband has the ability to intercede when his wife makes a neder which qualifies as either Inui Nefesh or Dvarim Shebeinoi Libeina, things which bring about pain, inconvenience, discomfort to herself. Those nedarim can be rejected by her husband. Likewise, things which interfere with their marital affairs, beinoi lebeina, that too is within his rights to reject. Now, in giving us examples of nedarim which are considered inui nefesh, the Mishnah presents sort of a cryptic language. What did she say? Im erchatz, if I will bathe. V'im loy erchatz, if I will not bathe. What did she have in mind? Sounds like a riddle. Im eskashet, if I will apply cosmetics. V'im loy eskashet, if I will not beautify myself. So what exactly did she have in mind? We're a bit unclear in terms of her intentions. And the Gemara now will explore what she had in mind. We're going to have several attempts until the final pshat, which will properly interpret her intentions. Says the Gemara 6 lines from the bottom. Im erchatz, if I will wash myself. What exactly did she mean? Hechi ka'amra. What exactly did she say? What words did she say and use, and what did she have in mind? Ilema da amra. Is it that she said as follows? Koinam peras oilam alai im erchatz. You see, if the Mishnah means very simply that she's making a neder against bathing, well, the Mishnah would just say that. Rechitza is usher to me. The Mishnah does not say that. Rather, we have im erch, if I will bathe. What exactly is going on here? The answer is we're missing an important factor. Fruit, peris. The Isser pertains to consuming fruit, and rechitza is being used by this Isha as a means to trigger, it's a tanai, to activate the neder against fruit consumption. So that's the first attempt. Ilay madamra. Perhaps what she meant is as follows. Koinam peris oilam alai. All the fruit in the world are also to me with koinam, with lashon of karb and lashon of neder. So I'm abstaining from all fruit on condition, im erchatz, if indeed I do bathe. So bathing will be an act, an activity which will trigger an isser on all fruit, and refraining from fruit is certainly inui nefesh. It's something which is very inconvenient. It's a deprivation, and therefore it qualifies for hafaras nedarim. So that's what happened. If I bathe, no fruit. Asks the Gemara, well, why would this justify interference on his behalf? Why would he make hafara? Don't bathe and don't be aser. Don't trigger the neder. It's up to you. Lama la hafara. Why would she qualify for hafara? Loy terchas v'loy litzran peres oilam elu Allah. Easy, simple solution. You know what? Don't bathe yourself and don't be aser on the fruit. The isser on the fruit is not absolute. If you trigger it, it becomes aser. Don't trigger it. So why would the husband do hafara? Why would he be allowed to do hafara? There is no neder inu nefesh currently. Don't trigger the isser. Another problem we have with this pshat, because if you recall, Rabbi Yossi responded to the Tanakam, who presented this as an example of Idin Nefesh, and he said, this is on the top line of the Amid. Take a look on top. Amar Rabbi Yossi, he says, Ein elu nidre ini nefesh. These examples of bathing, of kishut, they don't really constitute ini nefesh, right? Now, why? What does he mean? If there is another factor here, the parents are going to be aser, that's certainly ini nefesh. Even Rabbi Yossi would agree to that. Abstaining from all fruit is ini nefesh, par excellence. So, v'oid, Another problem we have, if this in fact is the equation that we're dealing with, if I bathe, I become asur on fruit, Rabbi Yossi would respond to that by saying, Ein elu nidra inin nefesh, these do not constitute as inin nefesh. Why? Why not? Dilma rachta v'itzru peres olam Allah. There's a very real concern that she bathes herself and becomes asur on the peres, which is certainly considered inin nefesh. So what does Rabbi Yossi mean to ask? Okay, so this doesn't work. So let's discount the fruit aspect and just stick to rechitza per se. Ve'ela, attempt number 2. You know what she meant? You know what she said? The Amra, she said like this: Koinam hanos rechitza alay la'olam. Everything pertains to rechitza. Benefiting from bathing is asur upon me forever. No washing forever. On condition, im erchatz, if I bathe once. So basically, bathing is the subject of the neder, right? No bathing forever. And it is also the subject of the tanaya, the condition that triggers that isser of bathing forever. If I bathe once, I am asur to have rechitza forever. Koinam hanas rechitza alay la'olam im erchatz. So it's interesting because currently speaking, at this very moment, she really doesn't have an isser rechitza. It's all theoretical. If I bathe once, right, and that once is certainly mutter, but once I do that once, that triggers an isser rechitza for all time. Still, this is the Ran's chiddush. The Ran points out this is the chiddush of the Mishnah here, that even though the isser is not yet here, it's all theoretical, it's hypothetical. Still, Tanakama says husband can step in, intercede, and reject this type of neder because it's going to lead to isser rechitza, which is inin nefesh. Mishamochi meifrla. That is why the husband can do hafara. Why? She's stuck. What is she meant to do? Tirchatz. If she bathes this one time, which is still mutter, but guess what? That triggers an isra of bathing forever. Mitzvah hanas rechitza Allah. That makes her asa for rechitza for all time, and that's certainly inin nefesh. What's the other option? Loy tirchatz. Don't bathe even the first time. Well, it's even worse. Isla nivla. Then she'll have nivel, unclean, and it's certainly discomforting and considered a deprivation, which is inin nefesh and qualifies for hafara. So that's the Tanakama's view. Again, she said, if I bathe one time, that makes it asur forever. Tanakama says you can step in and do hafara because if she bathes that first time, that triggers an isser of rechitza, which is inin nefesh according to the Tanakama's opinion on things. Whereas if she refrains even from that first time, then it's even worse. For sure, that's inin nefesh. Rabbi Yossi Savar, he says no problem. Efsha deloy rachza. Forget about rechitza. Ulam nivul lechashinan, this uncleanliness, this nivul, this feeling of nivul. It's not too much of a concern. Meaning, inui nefesh must be something which pertains to the internal, life of a person. Food consumption, etc. That's nefesh-related deprivations. But rinsing, bathing, those are external experiences which do not qualify according to Rabbi Yossi, not qualify as, and are not classified as inui nefesh. No problem. You don't want to bathe, don't bathe. There's no, that's not a reason for the husband to do hafara. It doesn't qualify as inui nefesh. Okay, so this is the second attempt at explaining our Mishnah. But we have a problem with that as well. If that's the pshat in the Mishnah, that there are two phases to this process. The rechitza now will trigger an isser rechitza forever. Tanakam says we're concerned because abstaining from rechitza is considered inin nefesh. Rabbi Yossi seems to discount that concern. It's not internal enough. It's not personal enough to be considered inin nefesh. If that's the case, if we take a close look at the wording of Rabbi Yossi and how he responds to the Tanakama, we have a kasha. Because listen, instead of Rabbi Yossi saying that the essence of the neder, the long-term abstaining from rechitza, is not considered inin nefesh, forget about that. Why did he have to focus on the subject of the neder? Suppose, theoretically, the actual subject of that long-term neder would be considered in nefesh. Okay, let's say. But what triggers that isur? The first rechitza, right? The first rechitza triggers whatever that neder is going to be. Now, according to Rabbi Yesi, abstaining from rechitza per se does not qualify as in nefesh, right? So even if that neder that's going to be triggered by this first experience of rechitza, even if that neder is considered in nefesh, we wouldn't have a concern. Rabbi Yesi still would argue his case, because what triggers that neder? This rechitza. Well, don't do this rechitza, because according to Rabbi Yesi, refraining from rechitza period is not called in nefesh. So listen, Rabbi Yesi should have responded like this: Rabbi Yesi, Omer, Tanai zeh, this Tanai, meaning this first rechitza experience, which triggers that long-term neder, ein bo in nefesh. Abstaining from this rechitza, this first rechitza, refraining from it is not in nefesh. So you should have said it more simply. Forget about the fact that the other part of the neder, the subject of the neder, the effect of violating this condition here, is not in nefesh. Even if it was in nefesh, even if it's pertaining to abstaining from peiros, which even according to Rabbi Yesi is in nefesh. But what triggers that isur? This rechitza here. Okay, don't do the rechitza, because according to Rabbi Yesi, lack of rechitza is not in nefesh. Tonight is this first bathing, this rechitza, which triggers whatever neder will come about later. Anybody in nefesh, this lack of rechitza here is not in nefesh, and that's the reason why the husband can't step in. That's the reason why he can't do hafara, because the trigger point, the activity which brings about whatever isser follows, this activity, or abstaining from this activity, is not in nefesh. So that's the problem with this pshat. Ella, says the Gemara on the third attempt, this is what she said. This is what she had in mind. It's very similar to before, but we're going to modify it slightly. Forget about the fruit that we suggested before. We're speaking strictly about rechitza. But there are two phases. There's the trigger point. There's the activity which activates that neder. Then we have the subject of the neder itself. Ella de Amra, Hanas rechitza alay la'olam im erchatz hayom. He says like this: I'm going to keep away from bathing for always. If, what's the condition? If I bathe today. So if she bathes today, Sunday, this activity triggers a permanent isser on bathing. Tanakama says that's not a way to go. Abstaining from rechitza is considered in nefesh, whether it's a long-term prohibition or even a short-term, a one-day isser. That's also considered in nefesh. Go ahead and be made for the neder. Rabbi Savar says no. One day you can manage. One day without a shower. Nivol dechad yoim eloshmei nivol, abstaining from bathing, just one day, a slight lack of cleanliness, not too terrible. You'll manage, and therefore there's no hafara allowed. Asks the Ran, 1 second. We had a kasha on Rabbi Yesi's lashon, and we don't seem to have answered it. Rabbi Yesi is not concerned with lack of rechitza. He doesn't consider that inui nefesh. Then he should have said, well, the Tanai, to abstain from rechitza for one day, that's not called inui nefesh. And even if, theoretically, bathing today would trigger a real inui nefesh, like abstaining from peiros, there's no hafara allowed, because just don't do the rechitza today. A lack of rechitza for one day is not inui nefesh. So why did he focus on the neder per se? Bathing, generally is not in a nefesh, even if the subject of the neder is really in a nefesh, like abstaining from peiros. But what triggers that is? What triggers that neder of in a nefesh? Today's rechitza. Don't do rechitza today. That's not in a nefesh. Same kasha as we had before. So the Ran says like this: there's a hidden message in Rabbi Yesi's words. You're right. According to Rabbi Yesi, lack of bathing, even in the long term, is not called in nefesh, as we explained before. Rabbi Yesi here is teaching us something. there are two categories of Nedarim that we're dealing with today. Ini nefesh, pain, deprivation, discomfort, and another category called beinoi lebina, things which interfere with their interpersonal relationship. Rabbi Yossi holds no bathing for the long term does not constitute ini nefesh. It's not like eating, it's not like drinking, it's something more external, it's less personal than food and drink. But although it's not considered ini nefesh, it is considered beinoi lebeina, because lack of bathing, lack of grooming is something which will ultimately get in the way of their interaction. That's because it's long term. But a 1 day abstinence from rechitza doesn't qualify for any of these. It's not in nefesh and not even beinoi lebeina. That was Rabbi Yossi's point. That's why he worded his response the way he did. He says you should know, lack of rechitza for all time, the subject of the neder, lack of rechitza permanently, if I bathe today, right? So that subject of neder, that long-term lack of rechitza, is not ini nefesh, but I agree it's called beinoi lebeina. And I want you to know, based on what I'm saying, that's because it's long-term. But if it's a short, it's just the 1 day lack of rechitza, is not even considered an issue beinoi lebeina. This is the way the Ran explains this Gemara. So that's why Rabbi Yossi chose his words very carefully. Ein elu nidre in nefesh. You see, there are two parts, two phases to this commitment of hers. She says, look, no bathing for all time. That's the subject of the neder. If, what's the condition of the neder? If I bathe today. Comes Rabbi Yossi and he says, you should know. Let's split it into two parts. Lack of rechitza is never in nefesh. Ein elu nidre in nefesh. Even a long term abstaining from rechitza is not in nefesh, but it is a question of beinoi lebeina. It's going to create issues between them. That's because it's long term. And we infer from there that if it's just that short 1 day lack of rechitza, which is the activity that triggers the neder, that's nothing. That's not in nefesh and not even dvarim shebeinoi lebeina. Okay, so we have a third attempt at explaining our Mishnah. Problem is, we must remember that there were two parts to the equation. What's the case here? Im erchatz, v'im lo erchatz. Right? That's the Lashon HaMishnah. Says the Gemara in Amud Beis. Shanis, you've explained very profoundly the first part of her statement, im erchatz, if I will bathe. And we explained it means to say that she's making a neder for all time. I'm refraining from rechitza for long term. Im erchatz, if I bathe today. Tanakama says, go ahead and do afara. Rabbi Yossi doesn't allow it. What about the second part of her statement? Im lo erchatz, if I do not bathe. What's that referring to? Hey chidami, what exactly did she have in mind there? Ilema, is it that she said like this? Ilema de amra titzar hanos rechitza la'olam alai. So the second half of her neder was like this. Hanos rechitza for all time will be usher to me. Im lo erchatz hayim, if I do not bathe today. So keeping away from the Beis HaMerchatz today creates an Isser Rechitza forever. That's what you meant? So then, skip the Hafara, leave her alone. Lama la Hafara. Why would the husband be able to do Hafara? Titzechi. Let her quickly go to the Beis HaMerchatz and bathe herself. And that will prevent the neder from arriving. There's no reason to do Hafara. Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda comes and explains like this. When the Mishnah says im lo erchatz, the Amra means she said like this: Hanos rechitza alai lo'olam. The hano of rechitza will be asher upon me forever. Im lo erchatz b'mei mishra. We're adding another element here. Mei mishra is the liquid in which they soak the flax, kind of very dirty and with a very, very intense, unpleasant odor. So she says like this: unless I use this Mei Mishra to wash myself today, unless I'm being Reichetz Mei Mishra, I'll be Asr Rechitza forever. Okay. So then he's not interested in her doing this, so he can do the Hafara. Problem is, we have a corresponding case in the Mishnah. Right, we had im erchatz, which we explained. If I do rechitza today, I'm also forever in rechitza. Im lo yachatz means if I don't wash myself with mei mishra today, I will be also rechitza forever. So in both examples, the husband can interfere. It qualifies for hafara. But then we have the corresponding case im eskashet. If I beautify myself, im lo eskashet. If I do not do so, and somehow that also alludes to nedarim, which justify hafara. So the Kavaseidik Tani, Mishnah correspondingly says, Im lo yaskashit. Right? So the positive expression, Im eskashit, can be interpreted like Im erchatz. If I beautify myself today, I will not be able to do it anymore in the future. Okay, that justifies hafara. What about the second part, the negative part, Im lo yaskashit? If I do not beautify myself, what exactly does she mean? So let's perhaps suggest, like we said before, by the rechitza, I will never be able to do kishut on myself. Im lo yaskashet b'neft. If I don't use some sort of very potent, unclean, kerosene type of material and apply it to myself, unless I do that, I'll be usher in using cosmetics forever. So that's a pretty dangerous thing. The husband. Something which really qualifies as eating nefesh, a foul-smelling liquid, and that justifies hafara. Okay, is that the pshat? No, it can't be, because applying this kerosene doesn't really qualify as kishut. Lichlach, it's dirt. That's not called kishut. So using lashon kishut, referring to application of neft, wouldn't really be an accurate depiction of that activity. So you can't interpret the word lo yiskashet as a reference to using neft. Says the Gemara Ella, the Ran adds the word Ella, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Ella Marava, whatever it is. The Gemara now will finally come to a conclusion. This is going to be the fourth and final pshat in our Mishnah. Again, the Mishnah presents examples of eating nefesh as per her saying like this: Im eskashet, im lo eskashet, im erchatz, im lo erchatz. What exactly is she saying? The Amra Hanas Rechitza Loilam Alayim Erchatz Hayim. So in terms of the first half, im erchatz, like we said before, if I do rechitza today, I'm usher forever. We explained according to Tanakama, we could do hafara because lack of rechitza is eating nefesh. Rabbi Yossi disagrees. What about the second part? Lo erchatz. What is that? Our previous attempt did not work out. It didn't match up with lo yaskashet. Rather, it's referring to a shavua, an entirely different commitment. U'shvua shalei erchatz. When the Mishnah says lo erchatz, it means she's making a shvua, a personal vow, a personal commitment. Not the experience is usher to me, that's neder. I will not do rechitza, u'shvua shalei erchatz. So one half of the statement refers to neder, right? Hanas rechitza will be usher to me forever if I rinse today. Second part, lo erchatz, is shifting gears. We're switching tracks. We're going over to shvua. Another example of something that she might say that invites hafara. Shvua, I will not bathe. The same thing with kishut, with cosmetics, with beautification. Hanas kishut alai lo'olam eskashet hayom. So the first half of the equation refers to the same thing like rechitza. If I do kishut today, I will not have kishut forever. That's a neder. The second part, lo yiskashet, refers to a personal commitment to refrain from kishut. Ushvuah shelo yiskashet. That's it. Easy does it. So that's the equation in the Mishnah. Part neder and part a reference to shvuah. It sounds good, but the opening words of that Mishnah, don't really match the content of the Mishnah, because the Mishnah starts with the words ve'elu nedarim, directed at just nedarim, and according to you, the Mishnah contains a reference to shvuah as well. Hi elu nedarim ushvuos mibayla. The Mishnah should have opened with the words elu nedarim ushvuos of eating nefesh would justify hafara. Mibayla lemisni. Amalaisi says you're right. Tani, let's modify it, and it will say elu nedarim ushvuos. If we say another way out of this question, nedarim and shvuos are closely related and sometimes interchangeable. Shvuos nami hainu nedarim. Sometimes a shvuah expression, a shvua experience, can be described as neder as well, close enough in the same family. The snan as we had back on Avtes. A fellow gets up and says, I'm committing kenidrei rishoyim. Just like rishoyim make nedarim, I want to follow their example. What does the Mishnah say? To what is he committed? All types of commitments. Nadar ben nazar, ubekar ben mishvua, depending on the situation, as we learned back on Avtes. It can actually bring him to all kinds of commitments, nazar and karban and shvua. What do you mean? I was never interested in making shvua. I said kenidrei rishoyim. So apparently nidrei is sort of an umbrella term that can incorporate nedarim and nazirus and shvuos as well. So bottom line is, the Mishnah here describes inui nefesh experiences, in which case if an isha commits to these experiences, husband can intercede, reject those nedarim. Examples of which are im erchatz, which means if I rinse today, I will never rinse anymore. That's inui nefesh. Tanakama says, knock it off. Rabbi says, lack of rechitza doesn't qualify as inui nefesh. Im lo yerchatz means shvua, I will not do rechitza. Once again, Tanakama says do hafara. Rabbi does not allow. Then we have im eskashet, same idea. If I miskashet today, I will never anymore be miskashet. That's inui nefesh according to Tanakama. In the second case, we have im lo eskashet means shvua, that I will not do kishut, in which case again it qualifies as inui nefesh, which allows hafara according to Tanakama. But not according to Rabbi Yossi. These are not internal nefesh-related experiences, and therefore are not considered inui nefesh. Asks the Gemara. So according to Rabbanan, lack of rechitza qualifies as inui nefesh. V'amar Rabbanan rechitza. Rabbanan maintained that lack of bathing is ba'inui nefesh, is considered paining oneself. It's something that qualifies and is labeled as inui nefesh. Kilo rachza, when you do not bathe. V'ramini, we have a kasha from none other than Yom Kippur. We know that on Yom Kippur one refrains from specific activities which bring about comfort and pleasure. So there's an isser against all these things. One must be ma'ana himself, as the pasuk says, ta'anu es nafshisech, deprive yourself on Yom Kippur. Purify yourself, elevate yourself as a malach, to achieve true connection and kapara to Hashem. And the Mishnah says like this, the Brisa actually, even though there's an isser spread out amongst all these activities, eating, drinking, bathing, etc. When it comes to that severe punishment of karas, that's specific to eating, drinking, and doing malach. Question is like this. If you maintain that abstaining from rechitza generates inui, so on the flip side, if a person does engage in this activity, does not do inui nefesh, pleasures himself, enjoys the experience of rechitza and Yom Kippur, he's violating the basic precept of ta'anus nafshei sechem, and that should generate karas. Amar Rav, there's a big difference. On the Bachas Goris, Hacha Minyan Dekra, V'Hacha Minyan Dekra, which is a classic expression of Rava. Let's focus on the psukim in each topic separately. Let's look at the psukim by Nedarim, which will illustrate for us what constitutes inui nefesh. And let's look at the psukim by Yom Kippur. Let's look at it in context, and we'll see how the Torah quantifies inui nefesh by Yom Kippur, which generates karas. Gabi Yom Kippur. If you take a close look at the pasuk by Yom Kippur, what does it say? T'chsiv ta'anu es nafshesechem. Pain yourself. So refraining from food and drink, etc., is considered inui. Milsa de yada inui hashta. It only refers to experiences in which the inui is discernible instantaneously. Keeping away from food and drink creates an immediate inui. And therefore, that's considered a primary violation of inui chiyuv of inui, which generates kares. Milsa de yada inuya hashta, as opposed to rechitza. Lo yada inuya hashta, lacking rechitza, abstaining from bathing. That doesn't generate an instant inui. Ultimately, in the long term, it's gonna catch up to you, but you don't feel it right away, and therefore it's not considered primary in terms of the inuyim of Yom Kippur, which are included in the kares consequence. As opposed to Nedarim, it works with an entirely different formula. Gaba Nedarim, which the Torah allows a husband to get involved with. How does the pasuk describe those nedarim? Kol neder v'chol shvus is a li'anois nafesh, which includes even something which eventually creates inu nefesh. Milsa de asyol leile de inui, even an experience or lack of, which can result in inui. V'chilei rachza, and abstaining from rechitza, that too qualifies asyol de inui. It generates inui eventually. When you pass that threshold and you get to the point that it's really getting to you and generates true discomfort and annoyance. So even at this early stage, the Torah says, you know what? Even a little bit of that. Get right in there. Be made for the nether, lest it lead to inui. So that's the answer. When it comes to Yom Kippur, a kares only relates to things which are true inui at the moment, as opposed to rechitza, which is just something which leads to subsequent inui, as opposed to nedarim. Even this qualifies for hafara. Now let's flip over to Rabbi Yossi. We seem to have a contradiction within Rabbi Yossi. In our sugi, Rabbi Yossi maintains rechitza you can manage. That's not called inin nefesh. And we're going to find a brisa where Rabbi Yossi takes this thing very seriously. Mayon shel bnei ha'ir. You have a town who have a local creek, a local spring, their own source of water. And they have a neighboring village with residents that come, use this spring. Who gets priority? Who gets first choice? There's only enough for so many people. Who gets priority? Chayehen v'chayei acherim. If the local people need it for their own personal drinking and personal needs, that's for their Chaim, for their livelihood, for drinking. V'chayei acherim. They have to choose between their own Chaim or giving it to their friends. Chayei and koidman, your own life comes first. Koidman l'chayei acherim. The Ran brings the pasuk, which the Gemara in Ezo Neshach B'Metzia cites as a source for this idea. V'chei achicha imucha. You're meant to impart Chaim on your brother like yourself, meaning first comes yourself. One is firstly obligated to look after himself, and then his friend. So if it's a question of your life or the other person, you come first. Likewise, let's say there's enough for their personal, human consumption, but there isn't enough for the animals. You have just enough for either their animals or their animals. Behem tam or behem asachirim. Either our animals or those animals. Behem tam kodemes behem asachirim. And our animals come first. Let's say we have enough for the people and for the animals. But there's not enough to go around for laundering everybody's clothing. Kvisa son, enough to wash our clothes, or kvisa asachirim, as opposed to our neighbor's clothes. Whose kvisa comes first? Kvisa son kodemes, kvisa asachirim, the local. Villagers have the first priority when it comes to kvisa. They apply the water for their kvisa before they share it with the others for their laundry. What about chayei acherim or kvisa son? There's enough for our needs, and we want more for our kvisa. We need for laundering, but by using this water supply for our laundry, there won't be enough for the other people's basic personal needs. Chayei acherim ukvisa son. So we have their personal consumption versus our laundry. Chayei acherim koidem ukvisa son. In that case, personal consumption, personal needs, certainly override our laundry needs. Rabbi Yehuda, he says a chiddush. No, kvisa sun, the local villagers' laundry needs, koidemes l'chaya achirim, takes precedence over personal needs of their neighboring villagers. Wow. End of Brisa. Says the Gemara. Look how profoundly important Rabbi Yehuda considers bathing and laundering and keeping clean. Hashta kvisa amar Rabbi Yehuda yesh bo tzar. Look, even keeping your clothing clean to Rabbi Yehuda is considered something of such paramount importance. A tremendous tsar not to be able to have clean clothing. And in fact, he says it takes priority over your neighbor's personal needs, personal consumption. Guf kulei lekolshken. Don't you think that the same idea would apply? Certainly, when it comes to rechitzas haguf, certainly depriving oneself of personal hygiene, personal bathing, personal showering, of course. That's called a real tsar. And that's really eating nefesh. If clothing is important, certainly the body itself. That seems to contravene Rabbi Yehuda's opinion in our sugya that he doesn't reckon that much with rechitza. He doesn't consider it important enough to qualify as eating nefesh. Says the more, you're right. It might sound like an irony, but it is true. Amri, the Bnei HaYeshiva responded, yes, correct. Kvisa, alima l'Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda considers cleanliness of clothing to be of paramount importance and even rated higher than personal hygiene. The Amar Shmuel tells us, Hai arvuvisa the Reisha, this uncleanliness in one's hair. The Ran says when he doesn't keep his hair clean, doesn't comb his hair, that generates all kinds of issues. Masyil de avira can generate blindness. Arvuvisa the mani, mixing up, meaning the dirt mixed into one's clothing. So lack of clean clothing, masyil de shiamumisa. That's terrible. It can create shiamum. The Ran says it's timohin leiv. Some say shigoin. It can actually imbalance a person's mental situation. It can be very detrimental mentally, having dirty clothing. And finally, arvuvisa de gufa, an unclean body, masyil de shichni v'chivi. It's not so bad. It can bring to boils and blisters and some superficial issues that can be addressed rather easily. And that rate's lower than the real concern of the shigoin, which is generated by unclean clothing, or somehow, unwrap the person and exposes the person to dirt on a constant basis, and really can get to him in a serious fashion. In fact, Sholchim Matam, they sent a message from Eretz Yisrael, be careful, Hizara Baravisa, be very careful from these unclean phenomena, unclean hair, body, or clothing. In any case, we find a source for this idea that keeping clothing clean is even more important and takes higher priority than keeping one's body clean, and that in fact is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. So clothing is super important, but when it comes to rechitzas haguf, as important as it is, but it doesn't constitute inui nefesh. So in conclusion, the Mishnah gave us examples of inui nefesh, where a husband can interfere, do hafaras nedarim, im erchatz, im lo yerchatz, im eskashet, im lo eskashet. Im erchatz means, if I bathe today, I will no longer bathe forever. Tanakama says that's called inui nefesh. Go ahead and disqualify that neder. Imloi erchatz means I'm making a shvur not to do rechitza. Once again, that qualifies for afara. Likewise by eskashet. Same idea. If I do kishut today, I will no longer do kishut forever. Qualifies as afara for afara. Imloi eskashet is a shvur. I will not do kishut. Now, according to Rabbi Yehuda, all these are not considered inui nefesh. We said that even according to the Rabbanon, when it comes to Yom Kippur, it's not included in the overall chorus generating. It's not included amongst the chorus generating activities because the rechitza isn't something which creates an instant inui. It's not as powerful and impactful as eating and drinking. And we conclude that even according to Rabbi Yossi, that personal rechitza is not considered in nefesh, but clothing, they must be kept clean at all times. All the best to you, Psuras Tevis, and much, much Hatzlach.